When people think about fine art, what often comes to mind first is painting. Whether surreal, like the work of Salvador Dali, speckled with impressionist color, like Manet, or detailed and impossibly realistic, the convention of applying pigment to a surface to tell stories, share ideas, or document daily life serves as one of our earliest examples of the spark of human creativity. People were painting in caves over 30,000 years ago using dirt, ash, and animal fat. From ancient Egypt to the Renaissance, artists painted on walls, wood, and canvas to tell spiritual stories and political ones as well. By the 1800s, painters started breaking the rules, capturing light, movement, and emotion. And today, there's no shortage of experimentation in how these paintings come to life. But three major categories for the discipline are paintings rendered in oil, acrylic, and watercolor, which was used to masterful effect in Rex Deloney's work In a Violet Mood, is distinct with its flat, transparent washes of color and loose strokes painted onto absorbent surfaces like paper. Similar to acrylic, watercolor can be diluted with water before application, but is made up of a combination of crushed pigment, a water-soluble binder that suspends the color when diluted in water, and creates pools of color that overlap and interact to create distinct, delicate details and soft colors. Even in the shadow areas of the work, the areas of color aren't solid, but rather allow light to peek through, giving it a characteristic luminosity. Painting isn't just a technique, it's a way of seeing. It connects us across centuries, cultures, and ideas. It can be personal or political, abstract or photoreal, messy or precise, and you don't need to be an expert to appreciate it. You just have to take a closer look.
All right. Rex, thank you for joining us in this conversation. Your work is such a vibrant and emotional spiritual energy to the Visual Symphony exhibition at Hearne Fine Art. There's a rhythm to the way your figures emerge from abstract backgrounds. It feels almost musical in how layers interact. And I'm excited to learn more about your process and inspirations. For someone encountering your work for the first time, could you share how your path evolved from being one of Beckett's top 10 sports artists in the early 90s to now creating deeply symbolic mixed media portraiture rooted in narrative and abstraction?
Thank you for having me. Well, my story is a story that's been written and talked about several times. I started out as a young man that followed in the footsteps of his brothers that were all artists, watching them draw. More, my one brother in particular, my oldest brother, Henry, was an athlete. And so all my drawings were about sports when it started out. So I would want to be looking at Sports Illustrated and drawing the figures and the athletes from there. And it just involved to doing sports in college and high school. I did the paintings when I was in college. I would do paintings of Scottie Pippen, who I went to college with, and then finishing up at UCA, I wanted to move to the Pacific Northwest to pursue a career as a sports artist, a freelance artist. So I did that, and I had some good times there working in that industry. As you said, I was in Beckett several times and listed as one of their top artists. My work evolved after I became employed. Instead of just being a freelance artist, I went back and started teaching high school art. And I still did sports art, but as I matriculated through that system, I started doing more genre art, more art from the heart, about my people, about the stories that I grew up as a part of a character in those stories. So I've evolved to that, and now my work is more geared towards the culture, the African American culture, civil rights. A lot of what I show is the struggles and some of the things that are more current in today's society.
All right. Your work employs what you've described as abstract realism,
Mhm.
layering expressive figurative painting over vibrant mixed media backgrounds. Could you talk to us through how you developed that process and what emotional or symbolic role that background plays in shaping the final image?
Well, abstract realism is something that I started. When you say abstract, you think of colors, lines, shapes, no non-representational uh, uh, concept in making art. So when I started painting, I actually started out as abstract painting, just thinking of the colors that I like to use, and then building up shapes, layers, having transparent layers, and having some opaque layers. After doing that, I would sit paintings to the side and just look at them and decide what type of subject matter that I'd like to put on them. So a lot of times when I start, there's no method or technique as far as what I know the finished painting is going to look like. I just start working with colors, and then later on I come back and decide what imagery I'm going to put on there. And it's always characteristic that whatever colors I use in the background, I try to use those same colors in the portraits and the figures to show that cohesion between the abstract and the real.
Right. This exhibition is rooted in the dialogue between sound and sight. How does music play into your creative process, either as a mood setter in the studio or as a source of thematic inspiration or metaphor within your work?
Music has always been pivotal in my works. I've always tried to employ some type of musical genre in the work that I do. As far as the studio setting, I love jazz music, so jazz music is my vibe. When I'm in the classroom as a classroom art teacher, there's smooth jazz always playing that my students have started to enjoy. But I use that music, and then a lot of the themes and some of the titles I use as titles of songs. I parlay those into titles of my artwork. So the music is really it's an integral part of what I do, and the outcome is usually has some type of musical connotations, whether it be rhythm, whether it be tone. It just works all together for perfect harmony.
Oh, right. If the piece you're showing in this exhibition had a soundtrack or a single piece of music that could be played beside it, what would it be? And how does that choice reflect the feeling or message of the work?
Well, I mean, when I think of a soundtrack for my paintings, I'm a big John Coltrane fan, and I think one of his my most favorite piece is a combination with Duke Ellington. It's In a Sentimental Mood, and that song has so many highs and lows, which show the rise and the fall, the syncopation that they create in work. You think about works like these, and you think about the texture and showing the movement in here. Although that is a frozen image, you can still see the idea of rhythm and movement. And in a violet mood is kind of similar to what I thought about within a sentimental mood. I use color for this, the purple being a royalty or a spiritual color. And then the title of that, in a violet mood, means that you're in a mood for music that keeps you peaceful, that gives you a spiritual feeling and a calmness.
Artists like Ernie Barnes, William Tolliver, and Charles White have clearly left an imprint on what made on your visual language. What have you taken from each of those artists, and how have you made that influence your own?
But one of the significant things about my art heroes is that two of them I've met and talked to. First, William Tolliver, I met him as an employee at Pyramid Gallery in the late 1980s, and it was just a pivotal moment in my art career to sit down and actually talk with someone that was in the art industry. From William Tolliver, I take his use of color, strong, vibrant colors, color that almost comes off the canvas and greets you. From Charles White, the idea of a soulful culture in his paintings. My thing was back when I was growing up, JJ from Good Times was my favorite artist, and I would think JJ was doing all these paintings. But as I grew older and started investigating, I found out that the artist Ernie Barnes was behind all of the beautiful paintings that were in that show, and also in the Sugar Shack album, Marvin Gaye album. So you think about the elongated figures, the muscular figures. Ernie Barnes did a lot of sports art. So he and Leroy Neiman were two of the artists that I look forward to, patterning myself out after. I went to October Gallery in Philadelphia in the mid 90s and had a chance to actually meet and talk to Ernie Barnes, which is a highlight in my life and my career. Actually showed him some of my work from my portfolio and got his input. And Charles White is just a master painter, printmaker, artist. His work really in the 60s, as far as the civil rights movement and the struggle, his powerful images really chronicled what the African American culture was experiencing at that time. And so I try to have some of that in my work currently, telling some of the stories that are going on in today's society as it relates to the African American culture.
Your palette is bold and emotionally charged, deliberately expressive rather than realistic. How do you approach color as a tool for emotional storytelling? And do you see a parallel between your use of color and the way music evokes feeling through sound?
So when you think about color, and when I talk about color, I always think about the first painting that I did when I started experimenting with color. I looked at in my writing, in my journaling, I looked at my father, who was born in the 30s, and I actually had a couple of his legal documents and birth certificates saying that he was colored, and then it would go from colored to Negro to Afro-American to African-American, and then they throw black in there somewhere like that. And so one of these first paintings I did was called Hugh Boys, in which I created a painting of 5 young African-American boys, but each one of them, I painted them a different color. And the colors were purple to deal with spirituality, yellow to deal with caution, red to deal with excitement and danger, and blue to deal with peacefulness and serenity. And so from that point on, when I do my works, now I always use color. I use colors to show emotion, to evoke emotion. So you may see a painting that I do, and it's all in purple, similar to in violet mood. So I'm really trying to convey that idea of spirituality. And how does music play into it? Well, if I'm doing something with a musician, that really connects it. But also, I've heard those people that have curated some of my shows say that it almost has a feeling of jazz music or soul music or gospel music, which is also a very big part of my painting style. So the music that I paint is art, and the art that I paint is music.
All right. Visual Symphony invites artists into the conversation across media. Are there musicians, past or present, whose work you feel echoes your own themes of cultural memory, struggle, and celebration?
There are a lot of musicians that I think of when I paint. I did a painting called Alabama. My painting was called Four Girls, but John Coltrane did a arrangement called Alabama, and it was about the 4 girls that were killed in a bombing in 1963 in Alabama. And so in that painting, which I did, and in doing that, later on I looked at the connection, but in the painting I had 4 African American girls, but the background I had lots of color, the warm colors, reds, oranges, and yellows, to give that feeling of danger, the intensity behind it. I think Charles Mingus, with his Fables of Faubus, I did a painting that chronicled or visualized that song, in which he was being critical of the governor, Orville Faubus, in Arkansas, for calling in the National Guard to keep the black students, the Little Rock Nine, out of Central High School. So you think about Faubus, you think about Mingus, think about Miles Davis, some of the things he did, and Thelonious Monk. So those four musicians, jazz musicians, really work hand in hand with the artwork that I create.
With decades of practice and recognition behind you, what keeps you creatively engaged today? And what kinds of stories or visual problems continue to drive your work forward?
Today, I'm really focused on social injustice, which is happening all around the United States and the world. I think one of the things that happens with my work is that I'm really trying to tell a story, trying to be a visual storyteller with my paintbrushes. And so what I really try to do is draw paintings from visually thick words, from themes that have to do with society. And so there's a show that is coming up in September here at Hearne Fine Art, and it's titled "What Time Is It?" And it's looking at the times that we live in, and also looking at time, the idioms that deal with time. A stitch in nine saves time. All those different types of metaphors that come along with time and being woke and staying woke. So those things parallel with what I'm doing and where I'm going with my work. So it's all about history, it's all about culture, and it's all about current events.
All right. Since moving back to Little Rock in 2004, how has being rooted in Arkansas, its people, its history, and its landscape influenced the tone or themes in your work? Has the sense of home changed your approach to storytelling through portraiture?
I believe it has. I think if you look through my portfolio, you see a lot of work that's related to Arkansas, related to its history. I've done several pieces that deal with the 9th Street era in Little Rock, and my parents met on 9th Street in the 50s, and so that place is near and dear to my heart. I think one of the things that I've also done is reimagine some of the history in the past. You think about Elaine in 1919. You think about the fire at the boys' school in the late 50s, early 60s. All those things have been parts of my portfolio as far as creating work. And also, I've been able to use my students as my models for these images and have them pose and then use them to tell stories in there. So it's also a way of connecting the future so they won't, future generations with the past so they can know their history. Because a lot of times when I do these paintings, it's an opportunity not only to show your work, but to also educate others by letting them know their history so it won't be forgotten.
All right. Your work often speaks directly to African American experience. It hopes, struggles, and its hopes, its struggles, and its heritage. How do you see your role as a visual storyteller, and what kind of legacy do you hope your work leaves for the future generation?
I take that seriously because as far as, what I paint and who I paint, it's all about me. I thought about years ago when I was painting, I was even asked a question, why is all my subject matter black? All the people that I paint. Well, you paint what you know and what you want to see. As a child growing up, and even when I was in, education in college, I wasn't able to see myself in the curriculum. I didn't see myself in the history books. So one thing is that I want children, black boys, black girls, to be able to come into a gallery or a museum and be able to see themselves in a different light. And then the other thing is, as far as a legacy, you think about Kwanzaa and you think about Kumba, that creative part of Kwanzaa, and it's always talks about to leave something better than you found it. Well, when I started out drawing and painting, there weren't a lot of local artists, as far as Arkansas artists, creating work and being recognized. And so one of the things that I want to do is always shine a light on young artists that are coming up and let them know that there is an opportunity for them to grow as artists and to be true to themselves. I don't want them to pimp the culture, as one professor told me in Louisville, Kentucky, just painting things for the monetary side of it, but to really have a meaning and connection and hope that helps people understand who we are, where we are, and where we need to go.
You always say the children are the future.
Yes, they are.
All right. Your backgrounds often feel like the build-up in a song, setting tone and rhythm, while your figures land like a powerful verse or chorus. Does your process ever involve specific phrases, lyrics, and memories that guide your brush?
Yeah, pretty much. You think about songs that build up. I think about some music, maybe Miles Davis. Miles Davis was a trumpet player, but he also was an artist, and he would have what's called flamingo sketches. A lot of these jazz musicians, especially, had titles of their songs that really were, in the art and music and that connection between the two of them. But you think about when I'm painting abstract backgrounds and building lots of shapes and colors, it's almost setting the chorus. I'm setting the chorus, and then there has to be some dramatic finish or some dramatic note or part in a song or in a composition that really is the crescendo. And so I think the crescendo in my work is when I add that figure on, and the interplay between the background and the foreground, the interplay between the negative and the positive, that is the high point, the apex of the work.
All right. As Hearne Fine Art celebrates 37 years of dedication to Black art and legacy, what is one lasting feeling or message you hope your viewer carries with them after engaging with your work in this show?
Well, I hope with the three pieces that I have behind me, there will be, first of all, a recognition of the beauty of art and the beauty of music, and that symphony. When you think of a symphony, you think of several different instruments coming together to make one beautiful sound, and that's what I hope my art will bring for the viewer. As far as Hearne Art in 37 years, I was fortunate to be here when it started as a young man coming from college and being that first employee. So to see the Giant Steps, which is another jazz title by John Coltrane, that the Hearnes have made in the art world and bringing African American art to the forefront in Arkansas and across the country, it's very important, and it's something that is going to be a legacy for years to come.
All right. Rex, thank you again for sharing your journey and process and your creative spirit. Your art just doesn't tell stories, it invites people to feel them. It's a privilege to include your voice in this series.
Thank you so much.
All right.